All right, everyone, welcome back to episode number 18 of the Asian Football Show. I'm joined with my good friend Erfan. After a very eventful few weeks of Asian football, we've had the Champions League going on, we've had the AFC Cup going on, we've had obviously the Beach Soccer World Cup, which Erfan has actually attended to a few games. We're going to get into that in a little bit. And we've had a few other competitions, a lot, I guess you can say smaller. We've had the women Olympic qualifying ones that are in progress as of now, and we've also had if I'm not mistaken, the West Asian Women's Championship as well. So yeah, F1, is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, hello Arya. I'm happy to be back again. Like you mentioned, some eventful few weeks it's been. We've had a lot of Asian club action, the beach soccer, which was very exciting, and some women's competitions as well. So yeah, I think we just get straight into it. What do you think?
Games, we're gonna go through them. So it was Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors FC against Pohang Steelers, an all Korean matchup. Um, First tie, we've talked about this already, 2-0 for Jeonbuk, and the second game was 1-1. But because of that, Jeonbuk is actually going to go through, and they're going to be playing against Ulsan Hyundai, or sorry, Ulsan HD. So another all Korean matchup, which may be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing on the other side as well. Also Hyundai, which I've just mentioned, they've beaten my team, which I wanted to go. I want them to go for Venford Kofu, Vanfore Kofu, who got absolutely destroyed. Let's be honest, 3-0, harsh loss, and then the second game wasn't so bad. They only lost 2-1, but they lost 5-1 on aggregate. And that's their dream done. As for the other side, we've got Shandong Taishan against Kawasaki. Kawasaki, who actually won their first game, but then they completely blew it at the end, where Shandong Taishan's Jadson will score a 97th minute winner to put them through, and that's Kawasaki Frontale out of the AFC Champions League. I think everyone has some things to say about that. The other matchup would be Yokohama F Marinos against Bangkok United. Very, very hard matchup for both of them. They really have to grind it out. But Yokohama do get the win again in another very, I wouldn't say controversial necessarily, but it was a very it was a great end. 122nd minute penalty from Anderson Lopez, who gave that 1-0 lead, and that's Bangkok United unfortunately out for them. So they're going to be facing, so it's going to be Shandong Taishan against Yokohama F Marinos. So again, another Japanese versus Chinese team. So we're going to have to see what that entails. And then on the other side of the bracket, Nasaf Rashi unfortunately went out Al Ain again, very similar to the Yokohama F Marinos and Bangkok United game. Both teams had to really grind it out. And they're going to be facing Al Nasser, who they pretty much I wouldn't say comfortably, but they did beat Al Fayha, who I think they were pretty much written off from the beginning, but they did put up a good fight. And then to the other side of that same bracket, there's going to be that disaster class of a game or just set of games by Sepahan against Al Hilal, who they looked very good in both games for the whole, like let's say the first 45 minutes in the first and second games were amazing, but they just completely blew it after that. 2 red cards in both games, if I'm not mistaken, Erfan. And it's just, I would say embarrassing, but again, I'm not surprised. And Sepahan did show that they can beat this Al Hilal team, but they really shot themselves in the foot, right? So they're going to be facing Al Ittihad. It's going to be a very interesting matchup. Al Hilal versus Al Ittihad. And Al Ittihad, who again had to grind against Navboho Namangан team, who were so good. They were very, very close, but unfortunately, it was not meant to be. Erfan, what do you have to say about all this?
Wow, a lot of action, and yeah, it was some very exciting games. And now my favorite tie has to be Shandong versus Kawasaki frontal. I mean, wow, Kawasaki took the lead when they went to China and they won 3-2. But Shandong with an outstanding comeback when they went to south of Tokyo in Japan. And yeah, at the end, it was a 97th winner by Jadson, the Brazilian player. And they did in style as well. So yeah, congrats to Shandong. You know, I've written off Chinese football a lot. We both have, I think, over the past year or so. So I think this is maybe a step, not a big step, but a step in the right direction. And I hope that Shandong Taishan can maybe improve the picture of Chinese football. In the all Korean game, I think Jeonbuk just kind of finished the game off in the first leg. Pohang, they you could see them trying the second leg, but they couldn't really do much. And then easy game for Jeonbuk. Also on Hyundai, like you said, unfortunately they beat your team. Vaughn for it, I think it's pronounced Kofu. And then Bangkok United, they topped the group. They were very good in the group stages. So it's unfortunate for them to go out at this stage. But I still think they had a good run. And Yokohama is never an easy team to beat. Over in the west side, the two Uzbek teams, both of them went out in a very sad way, to be honest. Both Nasaf Gharshi and Navbahor, they got 0-0 ties in the first leg at home against Al Ain and Al Ittihad, respectively. But yeah, unfortunately, late goals. The games were very similar, actually. Both Uzbek teams took the lead in the second leg away, but then Al Ain and Al Ittihad both made comebacks, and they got very late winners. And then the Sepahan game, yeah, like you said, man, they were not even playing bad, and they took the lead in both games. But when they got the red card, it just kind of ruined everything for them. And it's actually a problem that they've been having for a while now, even in the league, not just the ACL. They have like 8 or 9 red cards in their last 7 games, which is outrageous. So they really need to work on that. So yeah, the bracket now looks like this. We're guaranteed to have one Korean team and one Saudi team in the semifinals. The other 4 teams that will be competing for the semifinal spot are Shandong Taishan from China and Yokohama F Marinos of Japan. And Al Ain and Al Nasser will also be competing. We could possibly have an all Saudi semifinal. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
With that being said, we're going to move on now to the AFC Cup with Erfan. You're going to go through this, so the stage is all yours.
Yeah, so first of all, we had the Asian zonal semifinals. MacArthur of Australia beat Sabah of Malaysia 3-0. And the Central Coast Mariners beat the Cambodian champions Phnom Penh Crown 4-0, which set up an all-Australian final. MacArthur versus Central Coast Mariners. Now, this is kind of sad to see an Asian zone final without any actual Asian teams. Now the only reason why Australia are competing in ASEAN or Asian, I don't know how it's pronounced, is because they've fallen into the rankings and now they have an AFC Cup spot, and the closest zone is the ASEAN zone. So they kind of took over that competition, and then MacArthur and the Central Coast played in Campbelltown in Sydney, and Central Coast Mariners won in a very exciting game, actually. It was 0-0 until the 80th minute. Then it was tied up 1-1, and with the goals coming in the 81st minute from Torres for the Mariners and the 88th minute equalizer for MacArthur. And then MacArthur actually took the lead, courtesy of Lachlan Rose, in the 92nd minute. But then Central Coast Mariners got 2 goals in the 108th and 120th minutes to proceed to the zonal semifinals, which they're going to play Odisha in a 2-legged tie. The first game is going to be in Gosford in Australia, and the second game is going to be in India. The games are going to be played across March. In the other zonal semifinal, we have Abdi Kant playing Tajang Futuro. I mentioned this before. And then in the West Asian zone, Al Ahad and Al Nahda both won their games and advanced to the West Zone final. Al Nahda won against Al Rifa, and they won in extra time. Al Ahad of Lebanon won against Al Kahraba of Iraq, so that's the last Iraqi team out of all Asian competitions. And yeah, they won the game on penalties to set up a very exciting final, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a pretty good review there, Erfan. I don't think there's anything else to add for any of these. I think we should now move on to the FIFA Beach Soccer World Cup, right? Which I think we both have a ton to say. I'll go first. So the games have concluded, and how should I say this? I think from the beginning we were expecting probably Japan and Iran to go the furthest, which I guess they did alongside the UAE. Now you got to remember this isn't like a big tournament. There aren't that many teams. There's I think only 4 groups, if I'm not mistaken. But every group had an Asian team, right? So Group A had the UAE, Group B had Iran, Group C had Japan, and Group D had Oman. And if we look at Group A, the United Arab Emirates were tied on points with second place uh, silver medalist Italy, both on 6 points. Iran finished with 7 top. So Spain and Argentina were in that group, and they got both knocked out. They went alongside Tahiti. And for Group C, Belarus finished with all 3 points, but Japan succeeded with 6 points. And then Group D, Oman, unfortunately, the only Asian team to not make it, although they had a win in their books. And the knockouts, Iran played UAE in an all-Asian game, which they won the game 2-1. Japan, unfortunately, they kind of disappointed me because they have a pretty strong beach soccer team. And I know they did play Brazil, which are the eventual champions, but I wasn't expecting them to lose 8-4, and they were actually losing like what I think it was like 7-0 at some point, and they came back scoring 4 goals. But at that point, when you've scored 7 goals, it's going to be impossible for you to come back from that. So that's a very weird game. I don't know what happened during that time, and then that brings Iran being the only team standing. They faced Brazil, unfortunately lost, and a very last gasp winner from Brazil, which means that Iran would then play for the bronze medal, which was yesterday at the time of recording, in which they completely outclassed Belarus 6-1. So that's pretty much the story of the Beach Soccer World Cup. And Erfan, I know you've been into those games, so I want to know what you think about them.
Yeah, it was some very exciting games. I went for the Asian teams. I went to Japan versus Senegal. I attended the group stage game, and they were actually losing until like very last moments. Then they got like 4 goals in 4 minutes or something like that, which was crazy for Japan. And yeah, they were able to proceed to the knockout stages. I wanted to talk a bit about Oman because I feel they've been done a bit dirty by the group stage standings, because they had Brazil and Portugal in their group, which are known to be powerhouses. They only lost 5-3 to Brazil, which is an amazing result. They beat Mexico, and losing just 3-2 to Portugal in their final game to get knocked out. And yeah, if they won that game, they would have proceeded. And yeah, Portugal is not a weak team at all. They were not the last champions, but the edition before that. So yeah, Oman actually did better than I and at least most people would have thought. Yeah, and then Iran just completely better than every other team in their group. Maybe except that Spain game where they had a bit of a threat. Nothing after that. It was just complete domination. UAE also, yeah, they actually won all 3 of their games, but 2 of their games were won either on penalties or extra time. So that's why Italy were able to top the group. And then in the knockout stages, I attended all of the Asian teams' knockout stage games. I went to Iran versus UAE. Amazing atmosphere, by the way, for these games. I wanted to mention that. It's kind of surprising because we don't usually see these atmospheres for beach soccer tournaments. So yeah, Iran won 2-1. UAE took the lead originally, but Iran just came back, scored 2 goals courtesy of Masumi, and then a brilliant goal by Mir Jalili, which I'm going to talk about him a bit later. Some fantastic goals he scored this tournament, and as a goalkeeper, not something easy to do. Brazil beat Japan 8-4, and yeah, but like you said, Arya, Brazil took the lead 7-0 at one point, and after the 7 goals, Japan remembered, oh, we actually have a tournament to play. So it was kind of a bit too late by then. Then yeah, Iran Brazil was a very sad loss. Second semi-final loss for Iran, and how much is it, like 5 weeks, 4 weeks? So yeah, unfortunately, even though we took the 2-0 lead, we couldn't capitalize. To be fair, we had our top scorer Mokhtari out. He was sick, so if we had him, maybe things would have been a bit different. But yeah, they completely destroyed Belarus in the third place match, semi-finals. In the bronze match, and yeah, 3 bicycle kick goals for Iran, and a deserved place on the podium. Don't you agree, Arya?
Yeah, I agree, and I really want to put an emphasis on both keepers. Did any of them ended up winning the best keeper award, or who did that go to?
Yeah, I wanted to mention this. So Thiago Bobo of Brazil actually won the best goalkeeper award. And it was kind of a surprise to even those in the stadium, because I think that most people can agree that Mirjalili definitely deserved that award. I mean, even I watched a lot of the three of the Brazil games. I mean, Thiago Silva was a great goalkeeper, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that both attacking wise and saves wise, I don't think he's on the level of Mirjalili. But still, yeah, it makes sense to give the Golden Glove to the keeper of the winning team. So I think they just went with the safe option.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Mokhtari won the bronze, what do you call it? What is it
Yes,
called? Bronze Golden Boot for
yeah,
the
he
most
was
amount of
the
goals.
yeah he was the second top scorer alongside Leo Martins, but Martins had more assists, so he got the bronze ball.
Yeah. So now we're gonna move on to the West Asian championship, which is actually, I think it's still going on as of now. So some pretty cool stuff to talk about, Erfan. I'm gonna let you entail with that.
Yeah, so the West Asian Women's Championships have begun. This is the first edition since 2022. We have 8 teams participating, and the crazy thing is only 6 of them are actually from West Asia. We have Guam and Nepal also participating as invitees. Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, and UAE and Yemen did not enter any teams. And I'm kind of surprised about the UAE one, because I know that they've been doing some investing into women's football. They're trying to run a women's league. It hasn't started yet, but they do have a national team. So I'm kind of surprised how nothing has happened on that. Anyways, the games are being held in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Yeah, in Group A, we had Lebanon, Jordan, Guam, and Saudi Arabia. And the first match day, Lebanon beat Guam 4-3. And Leila Iskandar scored a hat trick for Lebanon. And Guam are actually they didn't play bad. They beat Saudi Arabia, the host, 2-0 the final game as well. Maybe it's just that the West Asian women's teams are a bit weak. I don't know. But anyways, Jordan beat Saudi Arabia 3-1. Jordan also beat Guam 3-0, and Lebanon beat Saudi Arabia 3-2. Then Jordan finally beat Lebanon 2-0. So the final standings now look like this: Jordan with 9 points in first, Lebanon second with 6 points, Guam third, and Saudi Arabia the hosts with 0 points. In Group B, Nepal actually topped the group. Palestine, Syria, and Iraq followed right after. So Nepal and Palestine advanced to the knockout stages. A very shocking result: Nepal beat Iraq 5-0. And all 5 scores were scored by Sabita Bandari, who's, if I'm not mistaken, the top scorer of the tournament as of now, which sets us up for the semifinals of Jordan and Palestine, which is always a nice game in any sport and any tournament, and Nepal versus Lebanon. So yeah, I think that's it for this competition. Arya, I think there's another women's competition you want to talk about, right?
Yeah, I mean it's not necessarily a competition per se. It's just qualification for the women's spot in the Olympic Games that are going to be held in Paris. So the first kind of, I guess, step has already been done as a time of recording. So as of now, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Uzbekistan versus Australia. Australia won that game pretty comfortably, 3-0. Which I believe Caitlin Ford, who I think plays for Arsenal, scored in that game, if I'm not mistaken. And the other game was Japan versus North Korea. That was actually the placement for this game was very, very controversial because they didn't find any place to actually play the game up until I think 2 or 3 games before, 2 or 3 days, sorry, before the game actually happened. So it actually ended up being played, if I'm not mistaken, in Saudi Arabia, in Jeddah, and with no fans. And I only watched the highlights of the game, and it did seem like North Korea actually, I wouldn't say we're necessarily the better team, but they did look very good. So it's not like one of those games where you'd expect Japan to beat the opposition like 3-0. And North Korea's women's side is surprisingly pretty good. I think this should be a known fact when it comes to Asian football. And yeah, the return game I think is going to be in 3 days, if I'm not mistaken, for both ties. So we're gonna have to see what that happens. So keep your eye on these games. I think the Uzbekistan Australia game is pretty much over. I mean, it's gonna be hard for Uzbekistan to come back down from 3-0, but the Japan North Korea game, yeah, the result is up in the air for both of these teams. The game is gonna be played in Japan, so Japan does have, I guess, some sort of advantage. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
No, I don't have much knowledge on this, so I'm just gonna stay out of it. But yeah, I think we've covered everything. Yeah, and I think that's it for this episode. Arya, is there anything you want to add?
No, we're gonna be back for the aftermath of the whole Asian Champions League AFC Cup stuff. We're obviously going to talk about the tournaments we've just mentioned, and if I'm not mistaken, there's going to be a draw for some other AFC competitions. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I think it's like the under-17 Asian Cup Women, something like that. I'm not too sure. I'm gonna have to double check, but yeah, we're gonna be there, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Thank
you
you
guys
guys
so much for
for listening. Sorry, Arya, to cut you off there. Thank you guys so much for listening, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And follow us on Twitter and on Spotify as well. And yeah, thank you guys again, and goodbye.